You know our first guest from the HBO hit show Insecure, and you saw him fly with Tom Cruise in Top Gun Maverick. His new memoir looks back on growing up with an imaginary best friend. We welcome the author of Did Everyone Have an Imaginary Friend or Just Me? Adventures in Boyhood, actor Jay Ellis. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
I'm loving the book, but first I got to get into, you used to live in Portland.
I used to live in Portland. This is like my second home.
Really?
I love Portland so much. I went to college here. I played college basketball
at Concordia
University in Northeast. Yeah. I love it here. And I've shot a movie here since then. I shot this Amazon movie, Somebody I Used to Know. We shot it here in Portland 2 years ago now. 22, I think, was when we shot it. So like this is like literally like my second home.
And didn't you intern at the Blazers
too?
I
interned for the Portland Trail Blazers during the Jailblazer season in 2003, 2004.
We don't remember that.
Yep. It's a blackout for all of us, actually. Yeah.
That's exciting. Okay, during quarantine, I understand this is when you had the idea to write your memoir. And I know you don't call it a memoir.
Yeah, but you know, it's interesting. Like let me go back. So I was, it was the pandemic. I was home. It was the first time where I couldn't be at work because we couldn't be on set.
Right.
And I found myself, you know, I downloaded Duolingo and I burned a bunch of bread and I did all the TikTok and Instagram trends that everybody, I did the thing that everybody did.
Yeah.
We did a British Bake Off at my house.
Oh,
like we did
funny.
everything. And then I found myself wanting something deeper, and my parents, they live in Los Angeles now, and I was down at their house and looking through a bunch of pictures, and all these childhood memories just kind of kept floating through. And across a lot of them were like these mischievous, adventurous moments with my childhood imaginary friend. And that got me thinking about, you know,
you were so cute, even
look
toothless.
at toothless Jay. I had just covered my body fully in Vaseline in this picture. And my mom apparently walked in and was like, "What are you doing?" Like as I literally got like the last Vaseline out of the bottom of the jar and smeared it on my face. She had just given me a bath in that picture.
That's so funny. So you came up though as a child.
Yeah.
You had an imaginary best friend, Mikey.
Yeah.
About 4 years old when he kind of came into your life?
Yeah, I would say about 4.5 years old. And you know, I did a bunch of research and I talk about it kind of in the first chapter of this book. It's a very normal and typical, like 68% of kids actually have imaginary friends. It's just something we all forget about. And we don't talk about because we've forgotten about it. But my dad was in the Air Force. We moved around a bunch. I was constantly in new schools. And I think Mikey was there to kind of be that support and help me process the world around me while I was moving around so much.
He had a unique look. He was like an older brother to you, right? He wore like overalls.
Yeah.
He had a flat top.
He had like the one suspender off, and he had like the, you know, like a cross-color shirt, so there was like multicolor patches everywhere. And I say he was like Dwayne Wayne meets the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like glasses and everything, like the full flip glasses. But I think, you know, my young subconscious, I was watching those shows.
Right.
And I wanted an older brother. I wanted a big brother, someone to look up to. And those guys were on TV and they were cool and they felt like they had the answers. And I think that's why this kind of like meld of the two happened. And that's what I imagined.
Your parents at first were a little concerned about Mikey, but then supported you, like let Mikey have a place at the table. Your mom made you 2 birthday cakes, but that was a problem.
I don't like sharing my birthday. I'm an only child, so I still want my birthday.
Yeah, because in the book you say, hey, he doesn't have the same birthday as me.
I don't even know if he had a birthday, to be honest with you. I don't know if we ever celebrated his birthday, but it's really interesting. I think my parents, because it was so real to me, my parents were like, is there someone sneaking in the house that we don't know about?
Right.
Which then turned into like, oh, well, maybe he's seeing ghosts, which then turned into like, oh, he has an overactive imagination. And how do we support that? They were actually wildly supportive. For a while, they were very supportive of it until it got me in too much trouble.
Why do you think Mikey came to be? Did you feel like, because really you were talking to yourself, essentially. And Mikey was giving you the courage or sometimes getting you in trouble. Why do you think you needed to have him?
I really think it was this moment where like my young subconscious was really starting to realize how out of my control the world was around me. You know, I talk about in the book growing up in the 80s and 90s is like all of a sudden there's this big boom in cable television, and you have 24-hour news networks and sports networks and music networks, and you're now getting all this messaging, and now we're seeing conflict across the world in real time, and we've never seen that before. And I think my young subconscious, with all the moving around, with being an only child, with all the conflict and chaos of the world at the time, gave me something that I could control.
Yeah.
And that was this imaginary friend to help me process it all.
You talk about your parents were young parents.
Yeah, very young,
they liked to wrestle a lot. And Mikey would explain to you why they were wrestling, because they had to do that. But Mikey could get you into trouble sometimes.
Yeah.
What would you say would be the biggest time that the most impressive?
Man.
There was a time you almost joined a gang.
There was a time. He wasn't there for that. So it's interesting because I tell these stories in the book that, like, I really talk about how my childhood was, the foundations of my childhood at least, are so rooted in his presence. And then all of a sudden, loss of innocence happens, coming of age happens, I'm now a preteen, and like I don't have the luxury of imagination anymore, and now I'm just in this real world. But now, because of that, I don't have this buddy who I had as a kid to bounce things off of and make decisions with, and now I'm out there doing it myself.
But he was with you a long time.
He was with me, yeah. I mean, you know, again, I talk about this in the book, like, imaginary friends typically can range anywhere from about 4 or 5 years old to almost 11 years old for kids. And I think Mikey was in my life from probably 5 to 10 and a half, 5 to 10, 5 to maybe even 11. So it was quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You talk about, I think, like it's towards the end of Mikey when you guys are building, you saw Back to the Future, you're building a time machine, and you go looking for a flux
capacitor,
flux capacitor. And you go from neighbor to neighbor. And you realize, well, maybe nobody has one of those.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was obsessed, I'm still obsessed with Marty and Doc and the entire Back to the Future franchise. But I think it was this really interesting moment in me trying to like rush the steps to get to the future. I think when you're a kid, you just want to grow up so fast sometimes. You just want to be grown and you just want to do adult things. And I think for me, it was just this real understanding, or now looking back rather, I can see that it was just this moment of me needing to just be present and not trying to, not having a flux capacitor was actually the best possible thing that could happen.
Yeah, it was like the beginning of him leaving.
It was the beginning of him actually starting to leave and me realizing that like I needed to be grounded in the world that I'm in.
You talk about the importance of your grandparents, both on your mother's side and your father's side. Every summer you spent with them, did a lot of traveling on the road. Great
a lot
stories.
Of road trips. Yeah, my grandpa, well, I still can't tell if he was afraid to fly or if he just didn't. Also, flying was very expensive. It was like, it was a very different, I mean, it still is very expensive, but it was such a different thing back then in terms of who could afford to fly. But we would drive from Sacramento, California, literally to Florida, to DC, to New York, and then back across the country every single summer. And we did this for like 5 or 6 years. And the route would change. Sometimes we wouldn't stop in Mexico or New Mexico, we'd stop in Texas. And sometimes we wouldn't stop in, you know, Louisiana, we'd stop in Tennessee. Like it would constantly change, but we got to see, I mean, I probably saw 35 states by the time I was like 12 or 13 years old. And you got a lot of history from your grandparents too. They gave you the history. Tell me about your parents today. They must be thrilled that they're now grandparents. Yeah, they are. They are. My parents, because your dad was with the Air Force. My dad was in the Air Force for a long time. My paternal grandfather and maternal grandfather were in the Air Force. And then my dad got out and he started working for American Airlines. And he's been with American for like 20-something years now, 30 years now even, since 90 or 91. And I got them to move to LA. I talked them into it. They were in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which we do still call home. But they ended up moving to LA. They live nearby and they became grandparents and they're like little kids. They're on the floor crawling around. And you just had your second in July. Yeah. And they haven't been around as much to babysit. They really haven't. I don't know what it is about those newborns, but they're really hands-off with the newborn. I don't know what it is. Nah, it's been great. It's been amazing. It's amazing to have family nearby to help, for sure. Having another kid was not something I think my wife or I planned, but then one day we were like, let's do this. Like, let's have another one. And it's been pretty amazing. Your wife is stunningly beautiful. Oh, thank you. How did you two meet? A really good friend of ours introduced us one night in a bar. I don't even know if that happens anymore. It doesn't. I don't think that happens anymore. Usually I hear it's an app. A buddy of ours, a really good friend of ours, he was producing at the time. He knew her a couple years before he knew me. We bump into each other in a bar, and then he introduced us, and then that was it.
And then now you have your second son.
Yeah.
And how does that feel? Like perfect for you?
I mean, perfect would be sleep. Perfect would be finding a way to get a consistent 8 hours.
Okay, gotcha.
In the midst of having this family.
Your 4-year-old.
My 4-year-old's amazing.
Okay.
The baby's amazing too, but the 4-year-old's.
Does she? You were just on the phone with her before you came onto the set. There she is. Let me just say, does she have an imaginary friend?
She does. She has an imaginary friend named Jack. Jack has written on the walls. Jack has poured water all over the floor. Jack has dropped his food on the floor. Jack is very mischievous, and sometimes she sits Jack in a corner. She reads picture books to Jack. She also has 20 cousins.
Oh,
20.
Wow.
Yeah, but they don't have names. It's just 20 of them.
Gotcha.
And we just are led to believe that.
We need to take a break. You're going to stay with us if you don't mind. You do have a book event tonight at Powell City of Books on Burnside, which you know is like the bookstore, right? The book again is called Did Everyone Have an Imaginary Friend or Just Me? Adventures in Boyhood. All right, we'll be right back. More with actor Jay Ellis when we return. Don't go away. Welcome back to AM Northwest. We're talking with actor and author Jay Ellis. His new book, Did Everyone Have an Imaginary Friend or Just Me? Adventures in Boyhood. It is in stores now. Thank you so much for staying with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk your career.
Yeah.
One of my favorite all-time shows, Insecure.
Oh.
Tell me what it was like to get that show and working on it.
It was a magical. I mean, in every single way. Like, you know, when we first got it, I don't think any of us really knew what it was.
Yeah.
And
we're looking at the cast here.
Yeah, this is we try to do like a yearly. We try to get together twice a year, but this last one was in October. But I think there was this moment where we were filming. We thought it was funny. We loved what we were doing, especially in the first season, but we didn't know how the world would react to it. And then it came out, and the world reacted, and it was absolutely insane. Like, I don't think any of us imagined that we were going to go on the ride that we went on.
Yeah.
You know, you hope that happens, but it actually happened, and it was one of the best moments of my life.
Issa Rae, oh my gosh, she's talented.
She's a force.
She is something else. You worked with a really female-forward cast and production team, all of that. What was that experience like for you?
It was amazing because you know, all of a sudden, especially because I was the one consistent guy across the whole show.
Other guys came and went.
The male lead of the show. So it was interesting because
Lawrence.
You started thinking about. I started to understand rather relationships in different ways. Yeah. Because now all of a sudden I was hearing all these different women's perspective on a thing that Lawrence did, and I'd be like, that's not what Lawrence did. What are you talking about? He went over here to do this thing. Right. And they were like, no, he shouldn't have done that and it was just so interesting. Of course, we all know that there's like two sides to every story, but like it's so interesting to now be in it.
Right.
And one of the things I think was really amazing is we had an all woman camera crew on that show as well.
That's awesome.
Which is not a very normal thing. And Melina Matsoukas, who was our director EP, like from the beginning said it had to be like that and wanted that, and Issa obviously wanted that as well. But I think there was a freedom for the women in our show when they would have to do scenes that involved nudity. Yeah. Like there was an ease for them. It was more comfortable for them. It was safer for them. Yeah. And I think that was super important.
Fans had to be Team Lawrence, Team Issa. Yeah. Did you get a lot of feedback from fans?
Yeah, I still get it, nonstop. I still get it. On this tour, the entire time, I've been to probably 10 or 12 cities now, and everyone always goes, you know I was team. And they give me their opinion on what team, people are still giving me their opinion on what team they are, which is pretty cool. It's amazing to see fans react in that way and have people feel so connected to these characters.
Yeah. Oh, I think we all lived one of those things, right? Yeah. Or all of them, actually, all of them. Top Gun Maverick. Yeah. Let's talk about Top Gun Maverick. Yeah. It's like you brought people back into the theater. Do you feel that?
Yeah, it's funny. With every time the movie got pushed back, when theaters weren't open yet, or when not all the theaters were open, when some chains hadn't decided to open, Tom would send us a text and he would say, hey guys, we're gonna push the movie back. You know, this is why, and it's really important. Like, this movie is a theater movie, and this movie is for the audience.
Yeah.
And like, I want people to experience it in that way. And then we happened to be the movie that kind of broke through the beginning of that summer, and we got people back into the theaters and just sent them on such an amazing ride.
What was it like to, first of all, meet Tom Cruise, then work with him?
Meeting Tom feels like a movie in itself. It feels like there's like I feel like the first time we met Tom was at a table read for the movie, and he pulls up on his motorcycle, and like these doors open so people can let him in. And the front doors, I actually think somebody was just walking out, but in your mind, it feels like the doors have opened and like a red carpet has been rolled out, and like the sun is perfectly placed in the sky behind him, so it gives him this like angelic glow. And then he takes off his helmet and like throws on his glasses, and his helmet just disappears. It floats into the air, and then he walks in with this big smile, and he's like, hey, I'm Tom Cruise. And you're like, of course you're Tom Cruise. Of course you are. Like, that was a movie in itself. Your entrance, it was amazing. I have to say, literally one of the most amazing humans, all around humans I've ever met in every single way. Like a mentor, a friend, a filmmaker. Like he really wanted us to understand how he's done this for so long and be able to take things that he's learned and best practices from his career and then be able to use in our own.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How did you feel about being nominated for an Oscar? The movie was nominated for an Oscar. I mean, that's
wild.
Incredible.
Pretty wild. And we won one too. I think we won one for sound mixing maybe. It was wild. I don't think any of us saw that coming. Actually, I know none of us saw that coming.
Well, I gotta ask you, how did your dad feel? He worked in the Air Force for years. How did he feel about you playing a pilot?
Yeah, I remember calling my parents. I was on the 405, our 405 down in LA. I was on the 405 and I called my parents and I was like, hey, put me on speaker real quick. And they put me on speaker and I said, I just booked Top Gun. And my mom is in the background. She's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's so great. And my dad is the one who's holding the phone. And he's like, yeah, man, that's cool. That's cool. But that's the Navy, right? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, oh, that's too bad. Like such a Army, like such an Air Force, Navy like thing. Like, and I love the pride that they all have.
Yeah.
It was really amazing though. His tone was completely changed when I brought him to the premiere down in San Diego and he watched the movie.
Yeah.
Completely different response at that point. He was so happy and so like overcome with joy. So it was pretty amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This interview was amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You have a book event at Powell's tonight, Powell City of Books on West Burnside at 7 p.m. Everyone will be there, I'm sure. The book again is Did Everyone Have an Imaginary Friend or Just Me? Adventures in Boyhood. Jay Ellis, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, we'll be right back with more AM Northwest. Don't go away.